Welcome to A Cinematic Journey, the show where we explore the themes, scenes, and elements of the movies that we love. I'm your host, Peter Billingsley, alongside talented filmmaker, stand-up comedian, Mr. Steve Byrne. Welcome, Steve.
Peter, happy holidays, and I got to say, I'm privileged to be on board for this one.
I'm
very excited for this one in particular.
Oh, cool. Well, me too. And this is a sequel to a film that took 39 years to get made.
The lead actor had not starred in a film in nearly 4 decades.
That's right. And this movie had to build a Midwestern neighborhood in Eastern Europe. And it also had to bring in truckloads of snow from local ski resorts.
We must be talking about A Christmas Story Christmas.
We are.
This is amazing. Incredible.
Oh, it was. Thank God. It really was.
Okay, go get in line for Santa, and we will meet you right here when you're done.
Okay, Mom.
Okay?
Bye, love you.
All right, bye, love.
Seeing Christmas through your children's eyes has the power to summon long-forgotten memories and emotions.
Don't let him kick you in the face.
Huh?
Okay, it's Christmas time. It's the 1970s. It's Chicago. Ralphie Parker's all grown up. He's got a beautiful family of his own. He's got a gorgeous wife. He's got 2 vibrant children. Now, the kids are excited for Christmas, which is only a few days away. Ralph's parents, the grandparents, are coming in to put on a wonderful Christmas, as they always do. And that's good news for Ralph. He's never really been burdened with this responsibility. And to be honest, he's a little stressed out right now. He made a deal with his wife. He's going to take a year off to try to get his science fiction novel published. Problem is, he's running out of time and he's running out of money.
That's right. Ralphie is still a dreamer like he was when he was a little kid. His dreams are pretty big, too. He's going to win the Pulitzer Prize. This is where his bar is. It's unrealistically high. But this deal expires with his wife that he made on January 1st. That's basically only a week away. And if he fails, he's going to have to go back to work like a regular Joe and put that dream away forever. So this is a tenuous time for him, and he's really trying hard to make this happen. And Christmas is really the last thing on his mind right now.
Well, the stress that Ralph is dealing with is really compounded by the sudden news that his father has passed away. As he would say, the old man is gone. It's a hard blow for Ralph and obviously his family as they pack up the car, they head to Holman to be with his mom, and Christmas is only a few days away. So this leads us to the central question of the film. So there you have it. Can Ralphie Parker pull off a wonderful Christmas, especially for his mother and his children, one that they'll never forget? This is no small task, despite his father's passing and him never really having to have done it before.
Ralph's dad was such an important figure in his life. They were very close. So in his mind, those were really big shoes to fill. But when your mom asks you, when your mom has that point of view, you're going to do whatever it takes to try to pull it off, even though it seems like an impossible task. And there's still this looming ticking clock that we talked about earlier, this desire to be published that's playing in the background. But first and foremost is this priority to somehow try to figure out how to pull off a really, really great Christmas.
Right. There's 2 wicks burning for Ralphie right now, and he's really under the gun.
No pun intended to the original.
There we go.
But thank you so much. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. No matter how many gifts you get this holiday season, you get to define how you give to yourself.
For those who have participated in or have given the gift of therapy, you know it helps people become the best versions of themselves.
In the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Christmas today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Christmas.
4 decades in the making.
Why now? Like, why now for you? It's such an iconic film. I know you've had other offers in the past, but why at this moment in time was it right for the sequel to come about?
Yeah, it was. It was 39 years, so almost 40 years. We were trying to do some research and look up on what the longest sequel was.
What was it?
I think we might be right there.
Really?
Because generally after maybe 30 years, like, all right, well, I guess we've all moved on. There was definitely some conversations maybe shortly after Christmas Story, but the original movie was not a massive hit, and it gained a lot of popularity over time through video and cable.
Right.
So those conversations, maybe got more robust then, but then I wasn't a kid anymore. And there wasn't necessarily a great idea for it. There had been some thoughts and maybe doing it without me or Ralph again, but they just always kind of sort of came and went.
Because you were even involved in the Broadway production of A Christmas Story.
The
and
musical.
That was...
So really the only thing that I ever officially did with the franchise was A Christmas Story musical. And that was something that we worked on for a while, that it eventually went to Broadway, was nominated for 3 Tonys. It still tours regionally, and it was great. And I felt very confident that it was a good adaptation, because the original movie is kind of an eccentric tone.
Right.
And it just lent itself very well to musical pieces. There's like a leg lamp kick line that's in the musical. Like the fantasy sequences translate really well to musical numbers.
Right.
So it was a very logical fit. I enjoyed that process.
Okay, so post the Broadway musical, I assume that gave you tailwinds. How does the movie come into play now?
I was having lunch with Cale Boyder, who's a friend. He's at Legendary. He was a good executive at New Line, made a lot of the great kind of comedies. He was on Crashers and Elf and some great movies. And we were just talking about stuff. And I was saying, I feel like I want to do a Christmas movie, just in general, because it had been a while for me. And he's like, well, what about, Grown Up Ralphie Parker?
Right.
I was like, yeah, I've thought about it. And he made it easy. And he spoke to Mary Perrin over there, who I've known a while, and they said, look, why don't we do this? We'll develop the movie, see if we can come up with it, sort of no pressure. If we think we're getting close and something's good, we can pursue making it.
Right.
So I spoke to Vince Vaughn about it, and we produced together. He was very supportive of it, said that he would be there kind of in my corner for me, knowing that this is challenging in one way, but kind of an opportunity in another way. So that in some ways took some pressure off. Like, okay, I'd like to explore that. That would be fun. And then we spent a lot of time just top-lining ideas and trying to think, okay, well, where's Ralph? So yes, grown up in a family. But I think the biggest epiphany to me was I looked at the original and thought, it's really a coming-of-age story of a kid. It's like a little boy kind of becomes a young man. It's the dad that gets him the gun. He knows he's ready. So it's kind of mythic in its sort of coming of ageness.
Sure.
And so I thought, well, what's coming of age for like a middle-aged guy? It's the two big things generally that midlife men have to face is sort of atonement with the father.
Right.
Which in this case is the passing of the father. And that really strips away your security blanket, and you have to step into kind of the patriarch role yourself. And it's finding your bliss. So really settling into the thing kind of professionally, or your life pursuit that really brings you joy.
So now that the wheels are going with Legendary, you obviously need to attach a writer or get a writer. Who came into play here?
Well, it was really, for me, one thought, it was Nick Shank from day one. Nick wrote for Clint Eastwood a lot. He wrote Gran Torino, wrote The Mule. He's a good friend from the Midwest, has a good sensibility, I think sort of a grittiness to him.
Right.
So I pitched him, the top line stuff that we had, and sort of Ralph moving through this phase 2 mythic coming of age. And he loved it, he got it, and he jumped in. And then, Legendary really just kind of let us go to the lab, so to speak, and start kind of cooking up something.
Big slippers to fill.
We're excited to have with us today the director and co-writer of A Christmas Story Christmas, Mr. Clay Cadis.
Happy to be here. Very happy.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to start a little bit at the beginning, and just maybe you can talk about how you first came across this film and this script.
Yeah. Well, I came from animation. I directed the Angry Birds movie, and then my second film was live action. It was The Christmas Chronicles. And now I get Christmas scripts all the time because I must want to only make Christmas movies. And so that was happening for a couple of years. And then I got the script for A Christmas Story 2. I think the email said A Christmas Story Part 2, which was just a joke from my agent. And I saw the email, and I told my wife, who's my producing partner, I was like, I'm not going to read this because it's going to be garbage and they're going to ruin it. And I love the original so much. I'm not reading it. So I really ignored it for a week. And then like a week went by and she's like, she can't wait. So she reads it. and she literally, I'm in my office, she comes in and she's like, this is your next movie. And I was like, oh,
Really?
no.
Oh my God.
You still hadn't read it.
No, I still hadn't read it. No. And so then, of course, I read it and I was like, damn it.
Oh, wow. Really?
Another Christmas movie. Yeah. Yeah, really. And it was just, for me, the hook was, especially this. This is a movie that, the original is a movie that I've seen 30 times with my family. We're one of those families that over the holidays, back when we had cable, it was like TNT or TBS and, the marathons, and we would just watch it. It would be on all Christmas Day. So I've seen this movie so many times, so familiar with it. And I just knew that to do it again, it had to be justified. Right. And then for me, the whole concept of this movie, spoiler alert, is the inspiration for the first movie in terms of Ralphie's writing and the Gene Shepherd of it all, and the fact that Peter's concept tied these two things together. I was just like, this is the reason to make this movie. So it actually had a purpose.
And purpose is a good word, because we talked about that before meeting you. Like, okay, even if we have a great story, it's still going to be looked at as a cash grab.
Yeah, and there were sequels to A Christmas Story. There was My Summer Story and a couple Christmas Story sequels, but I'd never seen any of them. I'd heard about them. I watched some YouTubes basically saying why they didn't work, and it was basically because, this is not my opinion, but whoever saw these movies were saying that they just tried to recall all the gags and jokes from the original movie.
Right.
And they didn't bring anything new to the story.
The minute your wife comes in and says, this is your next film, and I had asked Pete this, I mean, you got to be a little trepidatious knowing the legacy and the iconic stature of this film. Is that weighing on you? Like, I don't know if psychologically, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, I have a Disney background. That's where I animated. And so I see all these movies that I grew up loving being remade, and, they a lot of times fall short of what I remember. Right. And so I didn't want to be that guy to come in and, ruin A Christmas Story by making a sequel that isn't, worthy of the original. And that's the hard thing, too, because I think the original is honestly one of the greatest movies ever. It was original in terms of the narration. It kind of set up that genre of storytelling. It's just a brilliant film. Bob Clark was a genius. And how do you top that? And so you can't replicate it. You can't go out and say, we're going to make a movie just as good as Bob Clark would make, and Gene Shepherd working together. It's like, it's impossible. But I think when I pitched it, I said, we can make a movie that honors the original, but it stands on its own. Right. But also reflects all the things that we love about it, and just try to hold on to that and make our own movie.
The Old Man.
The loss of the old man was in the original that you had read, happened 4 years ago. Right. So Ralph goes home and it's like, you catch up through VO. The old man had passed 4 years ago. Right. Well, you don't feel anything. Yeah. It's like you're not experiencing, it's the stuff I call rear view mirror storytelling. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to feel bad because you're telling me that he died 4 years ago. Right. But I'm not watching the character experience it. Right. And we had that idea. We talked about it, and then we pitched it to Warner's. And I think we had soft pitched it, but once you were there, it was like, okay, we can really pull this off. And it's like, all right, the old man's going to die. Page 12, and we're going to feel it, and Ralph's going to feel it. Right, and you're going to really empathize with this guy.
Mr. Ralph Parker speaking. Hi, Mom.
Oh, Grandma.
What's wrong?
What?
What?
I don't know.
Okay. Where are you now? Nothing can prepare us for one of life's most painful and inescapable events. The passing of a parent. Okay.
And they were like, oh, well, you can't survive that. But then we're like, oh, you mean like every Disney movie, every kids movie in history, Bambi, right?
Wow, that's a crazy...
You have someone close to them die.
Yeah.
And as a result, as an audience member, you feel very connected to them. We all know what that feels like, and you kind of root for them.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's basically
Luke loses his
moving our
family.
inciting incident into our movie
Right,
versus
right, exactly. Having it in the rearview mirror.
and there were just issues with
caring about it.
like, it's been 4 years and Ralphie hasn't dealt with it. Like, what's the issue there? And it raised more questions than
You're exactly right.
we wanted. It just kind of made you question, like, does Ralphie did he have a falling out? Like, what's the deal?
Right.
But we didn't want any of that.
You're almost asking too much of the audience. It's in the ether.
Yeah.
You figure it out. It's like, no, put it on the film and you figure it out. Let me
It
just
seems
watch
so
it.
logical,
Yeah.
but then it was nervous because, well, it's a family movie. It's comedic. It's like, can we survive that? And we did. And I remember some of the great writing that you did was we just looked at really the start of conflict of this movie when he sees his mom out front of the house and she says, you have to put on a great Christmas no matter what.
Yeah.
And put on a happy face. And you had adjusted a lot of that. That was a scene it was like, okay, we can do the death, but how do we left turn back into, all right, let's have some fun.
Yeah.
And
Right,
quickly
right.
not spend 15 minutes in the movie wearing black and veils.
Sure.
And then moving on. And, I think that scene is just a really good example of watching it happen on screen. And if the mom's okay with it, then the audience is going to be okay with it. You feel bad for the mom.
And it's great too, just for Ralphie's character, where it's like his journey. He doesn't know what his journey is until it shows up, which is this request. It's not just dealing with his father's death and bringing his family together. It's actually making a great Christmas, which he did not expect. So I think that just is this complication that is really the core of what we put on the poster and the trailer. That's what people know the movie's about.
Right.
But I, for the character, not expecting that, I think that's what makes it interesting. Versus starting your movie off with, we're going to have a great Christmas. It's just not the same thing.
Right.
It's this call to action for the character that his hero's journey begins here.
We're not in Cleveland anymore.
Now, I went to Kent State University in Ohio, 45 minutes away from Cleveland. And one of the first things you do, it's kind of a rite of passage. It's like, you got to go see the Christmas Story House. It's like, oh, it's here? It's kind of cool. So it is the bread and butter of Cleveland, Ohio. It's like, there's LeBron, there's the Christmas Story House. And you guys actually did not go to Cleveland. You turned Bulgaria into Homan. How did this all develop, and how did you end up out there? It's kind of wild.
Well, I've never been to Cleveland, so I've never seen the original house, which is kind of weird, right?
But you erected it.
Yeah, but apparently it doesn't look anything like the house from 1983, which was when the first movie was filmed, right? There's a parking lot next door because the house burned down, and there's a gate around the museum, and there's a gift shop across the street. And so I think logistically filming there, it was sort of impossible.
Right.
And then fundamentally, money-wise, it was impossible. But apparently, if you go to Bulgaria, they can build you an entire neighborhood for the cost of shooting in Cleveland.
How many houses?
11 houses.
11 houses.
That is unbelievable.
That are built. And those are built, and that's not visual effects. And we ran, before you came on, scenarios. So, like, you'll budget, you'll kind of have the basic script, but, and they'll run what's called a scenario. So they'll budget it at different places around the world.
Sure.
Based on the labor rates, the rebate. So you run Atlanta, we ran Montreal, and then they said Bulgaria. And they're like, if you want to build all these houses, if you want to build a neighborhood.
Right.
And you want to have days of shooting, right? Like to make your movie.
Right.
You're going there.
Yeah.
Because it's the only place the numbers work. If you build it in Montreal, you'd get 35 days instead of 46 days of shooting, right? It's just, you got to take it from somewhere. And because of the labor rates and the skilled carpentry, they're very good craftsmen there and historically. And we had never done a movie there. Legendary had done a couple. And they're like, Bulgaria, really?
Right.
But sometimes you're asked. In this case, we were told you're going to Bulgaria.
Yeah, and it's interesting to be in that position because I've never, I've shot in Toronto on my last movie.
Right.
But it's kind of the choice of like, well, do you want to make the movie or do you not want to make the movie? That's kind of where it is with the budget and all that stuff. And so it's like, yeah, Bulgaria sounds amazing.
Let it snow.
You guys are in Bulgaria, the promise of snow, et cetera, but you don't have any snow. In fact, things got so bad, you needed to go to extreme lengths to get snow.
There was just no snow that winter in Bulgaria. The day prepping before, I have a picture. A guy is prepping the set. There's no snow, and he doesn't even have a shirt on. It's so hot. It's like 70 degrees. I'm like, what happened to the snow? So the same thing out front all the houses. So we had to bring in snow there and create snow, and it was made of diapers, right? Ground up diapers.
Yeah, there's all sorts of mechanisms they do to make fake snow. So one, they had these apparently very expensive bags of shredded white paper.
Okay.
It's like copy paper that's been pulverized.
Right.
And they can blow that through a thing and it looks like it's kind of showering down. And they would spray trees and houses and things like that, and it would just kind of stick on there after a while. And then snowballs that anyone threw were diaper filling. So if you tear a diaper apart,
not used.
yeah, not
fortunately.
used. But
They
yeah,
were
you
not
tear open a
used.
diaper, the chemicals in there, they're very absorbent. So you soak those in water and they become these perfect little things that you can make snowballs. So we would make, we had a wheelbarrow full of snowballs ready to be thrown at any point in a scene that we needed.
So when
it.
you visit
Right.
grandparents at the home this winter, there you go.
Tear open some
Snowball
diapers.
fight. Yeah, there you go.
Make movie snowballs. They'll never melt.
And then had to import snow
Yeah.
from the local ski resorts.
If you've ever gone sledding,
Sure.
you need snow.
Pretty imperative.
Fake snow.
Fake snow and sleds
Fake
do not
snow
work.
does not work like real snow. You
Right.
need that, whatever that physics is.
Sure.
And so like they brought in a couple trucks one day to test it, and kind of they filled this, like a half football field
Yeah.
worth of space on this hill.
Right.
And then, by the end of the day it was melting, and the next morning it was mud. And I remember saying to Myron, I want a truck, round the clock,
Yeah,
trucks of
every
snow, trucks
couple
of snow.
hours, fresh trucks
and
to
they
come
weren't
in.
coming, and
Right.
so we did manage to build like designated paths. Okay, they're going to go here. So we would put the snow there.
Oh, wow.
And so basically anytime you see snow in this movie, it's not snow. It's
Right.
fake. And it's either CG or it's powder or it's paper or it's blankets.
By the way, a similar problem on the original Christmas Story.
Yeah, right.
In Cleveland in January, it did not snow to the level it did in Canada, like you see in the school scene when there's
Right.
a blizzard when he sticks his tongue on the pole. But the stuff around the house in Cleveland, it wasn't. And back then, it was more like foam. Like I remember fire trucks coming and spraying this stuff. So it becomes this crazy combination and deep background spraying on the trees. So a similar thing. I'm sure they felt safe in Cleveland. Like, well, it's going to snow, obviously, because it's such a part of the fabric of the story and Gene's
Yeah.
writing, battling the cold.
Right.
But we just didn't get lucky in Bulgaria, and we didn't get lucky in Cleveland either.
No.
In fact, when it was not snowing in Bulgaria, I was like, oh, you know what? The first one survived it. We can survive this too. Like,
Right. It felt kind of tradition.
yeah, I was like, all right, I guess these Christmas story movies just don't get real snow. If you're running a small business, especially around the holidays, you know things can get very stressful. New customers and new heights means new problems every single day. And as your business grows and your company expands, the simple tasks you used to do in a day are now taking weeks to complete.
Well, if this is you. You should know these three numbers: 36,000, 25, 1.
36,000, that's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more.
25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less. Close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs.
1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all your key performance indicators in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins.
Everything you need, all in one place with NetSuite.
Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance. Absolutely free at netsuite.com/Christmas.
That's netsuite.com/Christmas to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/Christmas.
Run it back.
You have your lead actor set, and now it's not just Pete that is coming in. You also have some original cast members coming in. I don't know their body work, but it's almost like, were you trepidatious as well with Flick and Schwartz and some of the other folks that are in here that hadn't acted in a while?
Yeah, and they had acted over the years, but like I had never seen any of it. I
Right.
I knew Scott Schwartz as Flick.
Yes.
And that was kind of the last time I saw him in anything.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of the same age, so it's like I grew up,
Right.
watching these kids. He was like in Kids Incorporated or something like
Kid
that.
Co. He was in the toy with
Richard
Pryor
so
and
it's like-
Jackie Gleason.
And
Yeah.
I grew up watching Peter too on Real People, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're,
so like
you're going way deep
I
on
was
the bench.
watching a kid on screen who was like my age, and
Right.
I thought these were like super genius, super
Sure.
talented kids that were like doing what I could never do, right?
Yeah.
And so, flash forward all these years, and so we have Scott Schwartz. It's odd because Scott Schwartz plays Flick, and R.D. Schwartz plays
R.D. Robb
plays
plays
Schwartz.
right.
It's a little confusing. Even you can see me now.
Well, I remember there was even some conversation earlier on behalf of the studio of maybe should we, have some stars in this thing, and that played itself out. I think they were nervous, and our thing was, well, the IP's the star. You know,
Yeah.
you
Right,
want
right.
like a Christmas Story as the IP is the star. You know, and we plugging in as the originals is going to be the best for the film. They said okay, but they said they had wanted RD and Scott to screen test or to audition, and I remember Scott calls me and he goes, audition? Me? I go, I know, I'm sorry.
Right.
It's not my call, but just do it, do a great job of it. And he did. And
Boy, did they
tell
ever.
he
Oh, it was
They were
great.
great.
I mean, for me too. Like again, like I haven't seen this guy on camera
Sure.
for 30 years, and he does this audition, and he's Flick. You know,
Yes.
his mannerisms, his little faces he does. I mean, that's the guy. You know, and that you can't take that away, and you can't add that from another person.
Right.
And so as soon as I saw that and I saw RD's audition, I was like, it has to be these guys. And
Yeah.
and that's where, you know, as a filmmaker, it comes from like, what do I want to see in this movie? If I was a person in the public and I went to go see this, would this make me happier?
Right,
And
right.
absolutely.
They all did great, but you guys are landlocked in Europe, so you can't just call a casting director. And so you ran into some issues with casting. Is that correct as well? Like, when you're
when you need people to speak English without a Bulgarian accent, it's a little difficult in Bulgaria. And it's funny. There's a handful of actors that whenever I see a movie or a trailer, I'm like, oh, they shot in that Bulgaria because there's, you know,
oh my
there's that
God,
guy.
are you
You'll
serious?
see the guys.
Yeah.
It's such
for
a
sure.
limited
Oh,
pool
yeah,
that you
yeah,
can.
yeah.
Three or four
if you're an
expats.
actor and you want to work, move to Bulgaria.
You'll get like at least an under 5 part in every single movie there. There's
is
a few
crazy.
expats that are there,
Yeah.
and they're in everything.
Yeah.
But then we had a lot more, and so we kind of looked to some crew members
That's right.
to do that. But we didn't necessarily tell them, because if you tell a crew member like, "Hey, we want to use," like, "No, I don't do that. I'm the crew member. You know, I'm not doing that." But we kept them in our pocket, and we sprung it on them the morning of.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
like,
you
guess
wait
who's
until
working
they
today?
can't say no. So we have to do this. We don't
Right.
have anyone else.
We literally don't have anybody. So it was Matt Clark,
Our DP.
our DP, Shay, our costume designer. Shay and Matt are both out front waving at Ralphie and then
newspaper.
walking by
Right.
when he's holding the newspaper. Rusty's at the table, our production designer. And then Jay is
Ashenfelter,
great,
yeah.
who's one of our producers, was in Higgbees, and we really needed a guy when I raced the guy
To the
across.
register. Right. Yeah.
I would say definitely more use of crew members on this movie than in any movie in my career, for sure. Every now and then, you know, you do one, but it was like, yeah, we're going to have to.
Higgbees East.
As iconic as the houses in the original, and obviously your film, Higgbees is as well. It's such a central. Obviously, it's in the opening of the original. You don't have a Higgbees in Bulgaria.
Definitely not.
So how did you guys go about culminating and resurrecting Higgbees?
It was really important to me to have the audience go into this movie and have no idea it wasn't the same place.
Right.
If Higgbees looked different, if anything didn't feel like it had that verisimilitude of the original,
Right.
I think the spell would have been broken. At least for me, I was very adamant that like this has to feel exactly like the first movie. And so actually going to Bulgaria and building it exactly like the first movie gave us that possibility. And it wasn't a small thing. I mean, you see the movie, it's full of people and kiosks and gifts, and it's an entire thing. And so I found I had to do this a lot, which was great. It's the fun and the magic of making movies is like I can do this with this much little thing.
Right.
You know, so I said, if you build me a fourth of Higgbees, I can shoot the whole thing. And that's where, like on the weekends, I would sit on my laptop. I would pull up Blender, which is this free 3D animation software, and I would, you know, pull
Nerd
in.
alert.
Yeah, pull in the model from art department, and kind of like, you know, scope out cameras and scout it and be like, oh, if I just only point this way and this way and stop here, we'll have 2 or 3 shots that are like CG backgrounds, extensions, set extensions, that really sell the scope of this place. And then once we establish that, then we can play inside our set and we can get it done. And we built it to the specs of the original. You know, the pillars are in the right spot. The slide is there. And it was always this question of like, do we need the slide? I was like, yes. You know, again, going back to like callbacks and like what not to like, you know, throw in the audience's face. Like if we don't have the slide, it's not Higgbees.
Right,
you know,
right.
We just said the justification was that's the Higgbees tradition. There's always a slide. Kids go see Santa, they go down the slide. It might be a different slide every year, but there's always a slide. So
they build some version of it.
Yeah.
And the thematic driver in that was like, In the original, it's really from the kid's point of view, like the terror of seeing Santa and what Higgbees is like. This was much more from the adult point of view.
Yeah.
So it's like, the kids want to go tell Santa what they want for Christmas. And then in this, we also built in that bar that the parents sometimes go
Higgbees
and
Lounge.
have some martinis in the lounge next door. So
Right.
it's all a little more from the parents' perspective,
yeah.
which is kind of fun. So
Right.
it's again that sort of idea that we had of don't redo things in the original, be evocative of them, but do something new.
Surviving Scott Farcus.
I thought one of the most significant and poignant parts of the film was Scott Farcus coming back into play.
Zach Ward, who played Scott Farcus in the original, was great. It was, I think, an opportunity. You got to have me such an iconic character. Maybe the low-hanging fruit would be, all right, they're going to fight again. Ralph and Scott.
Yeah.
Or Scott's a criminal, his life went horrible. But the turn to make him to say, hey, he actually kind of straightened out his life. And now he's a police officer in town. Felt like a really good starting point.
Put your hands up. I said put them up!
It's okay. I know the owner, Flick. I just had to borrow a Christmas star. I left a note.
You left a note. Well, that's a new one. Wait. Don't I know you?
Scott Farcus. There he was with those same yellow eyes. Dear God, he still had yellow eyes.
We had the framework of something, but Zach really brought a lot to that.
Yeah, he
scene.
really did. He really just brought a lot of thought to it because he's been living with this character his whole life.
Sure, yeah.
I think he'll say the same thing where it's like it's hard to be known as this bad guy. And he
Right.
talks about how he would go to a parade and he'd be waving at people and they'd be kind of waving him and then he would, pump his fist at people and they'd start to cheer and he realized like, I'm the bad guy.
And always having to kind of feel like he had to, in some ways, be that guy.
Yeah.
Right, for
Yeah.
the fans. Yes, they're excited to meet him, but they're really excited when he's showing the teeth or doing that because that's how they see him. And people liked him for that, and other bad guys liked him as a bad guy.
And but it's like there's a weight to that, carrying that through your whole life of like, I'm the bad guy. Yeah. And so I think he came to this with a lot of thought about obviously it was written as he's a police officer now and he could have just been a bad cop, but he's like, well, no, I think he's turned things around and we constructed this thing where it's because of this moment that we saw in the first movie where he did get his ass handed to him.
Right.
And it really kind of set him on the right course.
Breaking into Flick's dump, huh? You must really needed that star.
Yeah, I did.
Look, I appreciate you blowing smoke up my dress like you did, but we both know when we were kids, I was kind of a nightmare.
Kinda.
I was just trying to be a tough guy, like my old man. But that day you handed my ass to me, that got me thinking.
I'm not sure where this is going.
And I put all that garbage behind me. And look at me now. I'm one of the good guys. So I guess what I'm saying is, I owe you, Parker. Hey. Merry Christmas, Ralph.
Merry Christmas, Scott.
In two scenes, basically, we see where he has lived his life and gone and who he's become. And the audience is like really surprised and satisfied by that. Like no one's ever said, oh, it's too late in the movie or it's not enough. Or like they love it.
A movie that's iconic is going to have an effect on everyone's life. And it's had its own effect on me. And it had a specific effect on him with that. So to be able to, change that character in a way on screen and transform him, I think was not only satisfying to the movie, but satisfying to him as a person as well. Yeah. And felt like maybe in some ways it slayed a dragon of the past for that too. And so
the character had redemption. And I think, Zach had to, he doesn't need redemption. He's a great guy. He's doing great. But it did, I think, serve him personally too in a great way.
A bunny, a lamp, and a gun.
As you might expect, when you make a movie like this, the studio is like, you're going to have, the leg lamp, right? And we're like, well,
Right.
Dad buried it in the backyard and there was taps playing. So I think it's, it's gone.
He destroyed
Yeah.
it.
You know,
Right.
well, you're going to have the bunny suit. It's like, well, we'll see. Are you going to stick someone's tongue to a flagpole? It's like, no. And so
Right.
it's kind of painful to kind of go through those requests of like, you're going to make the audience happy. And yeah, I don't love fan service.
Right.
It makes the audience feel sort of smart sometimes, but it's not necessarily smart storytelling.
Yeah, and there were certain ones that we decided on. The ones I love are the super deep Easter eggs, like when you open the refrigerator and you see all the casseroles. Look at the names. There's one from Miss Shields. Miss Shields was Ralphie's grade school teacher in the original movies.
Yeah.
So those were the fun ones to do, and there's a lot of them. I would say the two that were most heavily debated were the bunny suit. I remember someone saying, "You're going to put it on?" I'm like, what? Dude, I was 10. If that thing still fits, we got major problems, okay? No, I'm not putting it on. Yes, we'll have it in the movie, but good Lord.
Careful, there's spiders as big as cats up there.
Attics are museums of indifference, littered with junk you don't want to look at, but don't have the courage to throw away.
This place is a mess. How am I supposed to find the Christmas stuff up here?
In the cardboard boxes.
Which one? There's hundreds of them.
Figure it out. We're busy down
He looks like a deranged Easter bunny.
And still traumatizing.
The other one was the BB gun.
Yeah.
And just like how much of a storyline
Sure.
should that be? There were pitches of, at some point, well, okay, let's have a C story of Ralph's son, Mark, wants a BB gun, and he's going from house to house because the mom had sold it in a garage sale. He's trying to track it down. I was like, all right, but is that on our mystic journey?
Right.
It's not. So, right, those were easy to eliminate. The gun, I think, was a debate down at the very end, and you just barely see it sticking out of a box in
Right,
the
yeah,
attic
it's in one
when he
shot.
writes, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to watch, you know, because there were maybe 8 shots that I lifted straight from the first movie, you know, like sitting in front of the Christmas tree at night. But, you know, again, doing those in a way where you're doing an homage and telling story, not just ripping off scenes.
Right.
But just to see those scenes and really when you have to break those down and analyze them and understand like what's making the shot work. They did some really amazing things in that movie. He
Yeah.
was a great filmmaker. He really was. I mean, I think probably first saw Porky's before I saw Christmas Story. So I love 2 Bob Clark movies.
Right.
But yeah, just seeing the filmmaking behind it is that you realize like what he created was really magic. And so yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on you to do the same thing. But it's also this great challenge to honor that and also make your own movie. And like you can never try to replicate it or replace it. If that's not, you know, what we're doing. We're just trying to do our best to, and I always talk about it like it's like a shelf and the first one's here and the second one hopefully sits right next to it and they feel right. Together, but they're never going to be the same.
I know I look forward to watching it again this holiday season with my family.
Yeah, thanks again for doing this. It was nice to be able to sit down and really get into the weeds with you on this one.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
been a
fun. I
while.
appreciate all the insight and thought.
Thank you.
Pete, it's the holidays.
Yes.
What do you think about? You think about food. You and I, we're dudes. We love food.
Oh, yes. We love cooking. We love cooking for and with our families.
Yes.
And we're going to be doing a lot of cooking on our Traeger this holiday season.
Yes.
In fact, we're going to fire it up and we're going to do a turkey on the Traeger and we're going to smoke a pie for dessert.
Done.
So many great products. They have rubs, they have sauces. At Traeger.com, you can get all of your cooking needs
Right.
there in one stop. And I've been using the Wi-Fi connectivity, which means that I can monitor the temperature, the duration of the cook right on the Traeger app on my phone.
Right.
I don't even have to be at home. So for something like the size of a turkey, I get it on, I get the probes in it, and I just start to watch this thing as it cooks. I don't have to keep opening the lid, doing the push test, second guessing, hoping that it's done. I know exactly to the number what the internal temperature is, and I basically just wait until it's done.
They have the pellets. They have different flavored pellets. They
That's
have
right.
different sauces and rubs and everything. It's all encompassing.
So whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned veteran, Traeger has the right grill for you. These grills are available in all different types at Traeger.com, and they have a sale going on right now. They don't do a lot of sales. It's $300 off select grills. Go to Traeger.com, check it out.
Front page news.
So the last publisher has passed on Ralph's massive sci-fi novel. And his mother had asked him to write an obituary for the old man, which he did. And that was a bit of an emotional journey for Ralph. He shed some tears, but really this great dream of his to become a writer is pretty much gone. And he had just said earlier to his wife, hey, a deal's a deal. I appreciate the support. I'll go back to work. It is now Christmas morning, and something unexpected happened. So let's take a look at the scene.
It wasn't the lack of success that bothered me. It was the sting that laid in the belief that I still had something meaningful to say.
Ralphie! Great job!
Okay.
Hey, Ralphie! Wife and I loved your story. The newspaper. It's great.
It's my story. How did they get my story?
Don't look at me.
I gave it to him.
What are you talking about?
Well, last night after you stormed out, the newspaper called. They wanted the obituary for the Sunday paper, so I borrowed your mom's car and I dropped it off.
It's not an obituary.
No, I know. The editor said the same thing. Ralph, I read it. It's the best thing you've ever written. Besides, I wasn't about to give them the lousy 3 sentences you scribbled on that notepad.
Oh, I'll get it. Hello? Yes? Yes, he's here. It's for you.
Who is it?
It's the editor from the paper.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, what did he say?
He wants to know if I have more stories.
You did it.
I did it. I did it!
There you have it. Ralph got published.
Yes.
In a way that he did not expect, in writing what was supposed to be a bite-sized obituary. Once he dug in, like a lot of writers, and I guess like Ralph, who writes a little long in the tooth, he wrote a story about his old man, and that made its way to the front page of the local newspaper. And they want more, which starts this implication that Ralph can probably not have to go back to work in his day job and can continue as a writer.
Losses become wins.
It is Christmas. The old man is not there.
Right.
And they had to finish all these casseroles that were dropped off at their house by the neighbors out of respect before they could even have turkey. They don't know if they're going to do that. This Christmas still hangs in the balance.
Right.
So let's see how the conflict of this movie ends.
Everyone gathered round, rolled up their sleeves, and loosened their belts a notch. Those casseroles didn't stand a chance, not with the bottomless pit known as good old Larry Novak. When I tallied up the final scorecard, it was hardly the perfect holiday I'd imagined. My wife on crutches, broken arm for my son, my daughter nearly blinded, stolen gifts, and my book flopped. But somehow, beyond the scope of probability, through all the headaches and heartaches, the house was filled with life, laughter, and love once again. The old man would be proud.
There you go.
So they pulled off a very memorable Christmas. Ralph pulled it off.
Yes, he did. It was not what you would want on paper. I mean, your gifts are getting stolen. You're possibly going to jail. It all goes haywire, but somehow it all still coalesces into a very memorable, wonderful Christmas, one they won't forget. And the presence of the Father is really what brought everybody together at the table.
And I think it's really in the essence of that voiceover, like this idea of what makes a great Christmas, right? It's a hard question to answer. And what might be great for you is maybe slightly different for me. What elements do you want in the house? But the idea that it's life, laughter, and love, those would be ingredients you would want in any home in Christmas.
Yes.
The idea that those were now in the house again, a house that had been a bit sad and lonely with the passing of the old man, that is now restored. And so for them, it really turns out to be a great Christmas.
Origin story.
So with him having pulled off this memorable, wonderful Christmas, let's see how this movie resolves itself.
That's great.
So there you have it. Ralph stands in front of his dad's chair. That was the chair that the old man sat in the original movie and is in his home for him. When he first walked into the house earlier in the movie, he looks at that chair with reverence and doesn't get anywhere near it. And it's sort of this kind of looming reminder of the old man. So to more comfortably take that seat is also really Ralph's now acceptance as the patriarch of the family, accepting that role and sitting in it. He'll be able to put on great Christmases and other events and be able to provide a lot of what the old man provided for him to his own family and to his mom and brother.
Right.
And then just the nice little bookend of this movie is how that voiceover transitions and you really begin to hear that those sounds of the opening of the original Christmas Story.
Right.
That's the obituary that Ralph wrote, was those words. And that's what really defines this as the origin story of A Christmas Story, because in that attic is where he wrote the obituary for his dad, and that really became the bones of the first movie. And that, you know, for us was sort of the completion. It's sort of the resolution of the filmmakers, if you will, that being able to do that and create this origin story was sort of the icing on the cake for the reasons to do this film.
You know, I would say most of us have healthy dynamics with our parents, with our, you know, we both look up to our fathers. I certainly look up to my father as a hero, and you would think, boy, I could never fill his shoes. Well, the point is that you're not going to, you know, not for your kids. Your kids are looking up to you.
That's right.
As their father, and that's what he comes to do at the very end of this film.
So where this movie stacks up, it came out in 2022, and when it premiered in November on HBO Max, we'd gotten some information around the first week of December that said it had been the #1 movie on the platform for, I think, those 2.5 to 3 weeks. And then on Christmas, it exceeded the premiere numbers as well.
Wow.
So it was finding an audience on that, and there's plans to air it across additional platforms, very much like the first film.
And on Rotten Tomatoes, it was
Certified fresh. Yeah, so the critics liked it, the fans liked it, so it sort of got both camps, which these films don't always get.
You know, if you were like me, I watched it that first time, and when we did the transition into you guys running across the street, I turned it off like an idiot. And in preparing for this, I watched the end credits and was incredibly surprised that what you guys did was you rolled out these end credits, and it was kind of an homage piece, but also an attention to detail and just, I don't know, like very nostalgic.
Yeah, there's some nuggets in the end credits of photos from the original and then similar framing from this one.
Yeah.
And that was an idea of our editor, David, who just really strongly pitched that and was finding these similarities as he was editing the movie. I think he was discovering some of these things that we intentionally did. And he thought it would be nice to show them to an audience. I wasn't sure about that at first, but David really stayed on it, which was cool. And he
I'm
said,
glad
look,
you guys
we really have to do this. And he was totally right.
It was great.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you breaking down this one with me.
I consider this, honestly, a privilege and an honor to be here with you and Clay today. And congratulations. I know Ralphie Parker wanted to pull off a great Christmas, but you as well pulled off an incredible movie. So a testament to you.
Thank you very much. So Merry Christmas to you.
Yes.
And to all, a good night.